I'm making this video to try and show you how some people think and how they're getting it wrong. Now, this is a comment to the video, The Insane True Story of Crashgate, where I break down that video that doesn't really expose Crashgate appropriately. Anyway, one of the comments to that video was made by this person here, Max Goat for Life. And the person that is behind this account has actually messaged me privately, and they appear to be a decent person. Okay, so I've got nothing against them as a person, but they contradict themselves in this statement, and it is because of desire. And I'm going to explain that to you, and hopefully explain it to them so they can see for themselves the way their own brain works. Because they're getting it wrong, and they're doing so because they want an outcome, and therefore they mold it around they mold what it is they want around the outcome that they want, and yet they project that that's what I'm doing when I'm doing the opposite of that. Because what I present about Crashgate 2008, I would be saying regardless of who won the championship that year. Regardless of what the championship outcome was that year and how the points affected Lewis Hamilton or Felipe Massa, that is irrespective. The fact is, there was an event whereby Renault cheated. They crashed one of their cars that benefited Fernando Alonso. He then won the race. He still got the trophy for that. Quite simply, what the FIA needed to do that year was say, Renault, you've cheated there. Alonso, you don't get that prize. You're disqualified from the championship for this absolute gross indiscretion. That sets an example to you. And now we reset the order of that race. Nico Rosberg, you won that Grand Prix. That is what should happen. And I would say that for any time such a thing should happen. And that doesn't matter whether that impacted Hamilton's championship or Massa's championship. That event was part of that season's World Championship. One of the teams cheated. Okay, now what you don't do is you do not void that event. And I'm going to take you through this comment, and I'm going to explain some of the implications of it. So anyway, here's the comment. James, as always, I love your outlook on things. However, here are some points I disagree with you on. First, in regard to Massa, you tried to simplify what happened in the race by saying Alonso should just be disqualified and everyone moves up a place. Yes, that is what I'm saying. But because Massa had the mishap with the fuel hose, he wouldn't have finished in the points. Yes. Here is the problem I see with your scenario. And again, this is the way the projection is. It's as though it's my scenario rather than the scenario. Because let's look at the facts. The facts are there was a Grand Prix. The facts are Nelson Piquet crashed his car. Right? Now, at the time of him crashing, we didn't know that he'd done that on purpose. So we have to assume, well, we don't assume anything. We just deal with what unfolds. And what you need to deal with is there is a crashed car. How do you deal with that? Well, the FIA have a responsibility to deal with that, and that is make it safe. So they chose the measure at their disposal, which is the safety car. They did what they needed to do. When you deploy the safety car, all the teams are aware of the implications of the safety car. What took place was carried out in accordance with those rules. Each of those teams are aware and they respond accordingly. They make a decision, okay, shall we use this situation now as an opportunity to pit our driver, change tyres and refuel? And that affects every team. Now, each of those teams would have gone into that race with their own specific strategy based on refueling and tyres. They'd have all gone in with their own ideas about it, and them ideas may have all been different. However, in any Grand Prix, if an incident takes place and it is either a safety car, virtual safety car, something like that, even a red flag, those original plans, they change because teams adapt. Okay, it's a dynamic sport whereby if one of these such incidents occurs, whether it's organic or not, okay, teams seize upon that and go, okay, can we get a strategic advantage now, or will we be disadvantaged if we don't respond to this accordingly? And so what they will do often is say, right, this is the time now where we need to adjust and use this as the period with which to now change our tyres and refuel. And that's what applies to them all. Uniform set of circumstances to all those teams. Now, if it happens to be that you pitted just before that and don't get the benefit of it, but like Alonso, he did get the benefit of it because he gained a lot of ground in that field, so be it. If that season you were due to come in on one of those laps that the pit lane was closed, and therefore by pitting you get a penalty, that is unfortunate. All right, but that applied to cars in that season where an organic crash occurred or an organic deployment of the safety car occurred, and it meant that the lap that they had intended to pit on, they couldn't, and therefore they had to have a penalty. Now, that is something that those teams should have taken up with the FIA before the competition even started, and said, well, this is a problem here. This is a problem with that set of regulations, and this is where it needs to be changed. That's up to the competitors to do that. And that's up for them to accept and agree to those regulations and to contest under those regulations. But what we have to assume is all of the teams agreed to the regulations and agreed to compete under those regulations. And all them regulations, you know what they are. And therefore, you also know that when these apply, they apply uniformly because they apply to everybody, and there'll be times where you might be disadvantaged by them, and might be times where you gain an advantage. For example, every time a safety car is deployed, if you're in the lead of a race and the safety car is deployed, any advantage you've got built up over the rest of the field, well, that gets wiped out. So you feel disappointed as the leader of the race, having made this time gap on everybody else, and that's all now wiped out. So if you're the leader, you feel annoyed about that. If you're in second or third, cast adrift of the lead cars, well, that benefits you. Okay, you get to close up. That time gets wiped out, and you're now able to contest again, or have a better chance of contesting. But teams know that. Teams agree to that, and there'll be times where they are the lead car and they feel disadvantaged, and there'll be times where they're the second or third and actually get a benefit out of that situation. And teams know that and they accept that. So what took place at Singapore took place in accordance with them regulations. A crash happened. It's the responsibility of the FIA to deal with that. They dealt with it. Now, teams, you make your decision. Those teams did make their decisions. Most teams pitted their driver, refueled them, changed tyres. Their driver went back out onto track, was back in that race, and was contesting for the win of that race. They were contesting for points in that race. Ferrari also had the opportunity to do that in the same way that every other team did. Because McLaren, with Hamilton, they pitted Hamilton, they put Hamilton back on track, Hamilton was able to contest. Was it Rosberg in the Williams at the time? They pitted him, he got back out on track, had the ability to contest. Everybody who finished in the points, everybody who finished that race had the ability to contest. So did Ferrari. And the only reason that Felipe Massa didn't contest for points is Ferrari's failure. Now, just because Ferrari failed, you don't then reset the race. You don't go, oh, we'll scrub that. So here's a comment then. Here is the problem I see with your scenario. If Piquet doesn't crash. So what you're now doing is projecting something that didn't happen. Okay? We can go to every Grand Prix that's ever been ran and gone, oh, wow. In that particular Grand Prix, there was a safety car. But if there hadn't have been a safety car, what if? It's all bullshit. There was. Okay? An incident did take place. So why are you presenting a situation where it doesn't happen? You know, why are you making up the situation that didn't happen? Okay? So if Piquet doesn't crash, well, he did. The safety car doesn't come out, well, it did. And we don't get the chaos of people having to pit with penalty, like Kubica. Now, what I'm saying is, you're describing this as the chaos of people having to pit with penalty. That's a known dynamic. That's happened at other Grand Prix. It's just unfortunate, and that has to be dealt with that way. All right? Now, like I say, the teams had the ability to contest with the FIA and say, no, that is not fair, in as much that if that was our strategy to pit that lap, and then due to something that's nothing to do with our fault, somebody suffers an incident on track, you deploy the safety car, and you're preventing us from running our strategy. There's a problem there. So that's what teams should have done. What they did do was they agreed to those regulations, accepting the fact that should that pit lane be closed and they needed to refuel, then they'd be hit with a penalty. That's the teams at the time. That was their responsibility to highlight that flaw in those regulations and do something about it. They didn't. So they accepted that. So that's not for you to argue that particular point. And the reality is, whilst you're saying here as well, the chaos, well, it's not that chaotic in as much that the safety car is deployed. You know that you can't pit, but you do know that when the pit lane will be open. So you've actually got several minutes to go, okay, when it does open, we're going to be pitting, so let's get everything prepared. All right, get everybody at the ready. We're going to pit. We might even double stack here. So everybody be prepared for that. And also what's going to happen, it is going to be quite congested because everybody's going to do that. But we know what's going to happen because everybody's going to utilize this opportunity. So be on your toes, be aware, but this is how we're going to do it. So yes, it's busy, but it's not chaotic because you know what's going to unfold. It's not just thrust upon you out of the blue without any planning time. You've got a couple of minutes to go, okay, this is what we're now doing. It's now the right thing to do to pit, because this is going to be the best race strategy by utilising this opportunity to pit and lose less time relative to everybody. If we don't pit, we're actually going to be left at a disadvantage, because if our strategy was to pit in 5 or 10 laps time, now the field is bunched up. If we now pit out of that field, we lose 20 seconds or so to everybody else. So we've got to now stay in with these guys. But it's affected the race in a uniform manner. The only one it hasn't affected the race in that uniform manner is the team that purposefully planned it that way so that their own driver would benefit, and that's why you disqualify Alonso. So it's not my scenario. That's how you deal with cheats. So, and we don't know if Massa and Ferrari happen to get it right when he comes in, not behind a safety car. So you're projecting a scenario which didn't happen. If he hadn't have crashed, there wouldn't have been a safety car. He wouldn't have pitted then, and therefore, when he had have pitted, would they have made that error? You're presenting the hypotheticals, where I'm presenting what did happen. And what did happen was that everybody was exposed to that same set of regulations that you compete under. There's plenty of other Grand Prix where the safety car has been deployed. And how many of them were inorganic? Now, what's organic and what's inorganic? There was one at Singapore, it might have been 2016, 2017. They deployed the safety car because a pedestrian was walking on the track. Somebody was walking on the track. And so race control deployed the safety car. So then what? The whole field bunches up then. Who was the pedestrian? Was he being paid by one of the teams to cause a safety incident? Was that cheating? We don't know. You know, they can easily pass that off as just some crazy madman, right? Having a psychological episode. But who's to say that he wasn't paid off by somebody to actually have that impact in that race? What do? Oh, we void the race because somebody's walked out onto the track. It affected all the teams differently. No, it was a safety concern. FIA responded to it by utilising the measure. Everybody knows what happens now. Safety car, some of us might pit, some of us might not. The field is going to bunch. It's going to wipe out all those advantages. Oh, but what if he hadn't have walked out on track? What if they didn't do the safety car procedure? It's not about what ifs, it's about what did happen. Think of every other crash. Can we guarantee that every crash you've seen in Formula 1 is an authentic crash? Is Nicholas Latifi's crash an authentic crash? Certainly didn't look like it. How many more? How many more crashes have taken place in Formula 1 where they were done by design? And again, I don't know. But what you've got to do is you've got to Assess the situation firstly on the grounds of, firstly, there's an incident. This incident needs dealing with. This is how it gets dealt with. If it's dealt with in accordance with the rules, then each of those teams knows what they're dealing with. Ferrari knew what they were dealing with and they made the error. And that is as simple as that. Any coulda, woulda, shouldas is utter bollocks, right? But the only reason you're presenting a coulda, woulda, shoulda, because that is somehow validating your desire to get the race voided. And the reality is, just because a safety car is deployed, you don't void a race. If you then find out after the event that, oh, actually, that crash was manufactured, also we'll void the event. How many Grand Prix have been voided because of a crash? Answer. How many have retrospectively gone, oh, somebody crashed, that changed things for everybody. The butterfly effect, it changed things for everybody, so we'll void the Grand Prix. Every time the safety car is deployed, it changes things for everybody. Everybody is impacted by that. Then what takes place is what takes place. That's what happens. If you find out that that was caused by somebody cheating, well, you disqualify the perpetrators. You impose a consequence to the perpetrators. But what actually goes on, the rest of it is still there as an event that is taking place, that is still a competition, that the other cars are still competing under, and Massa still had the opportunity. And were it not for the Ferrari error, Massa would have returned to the track in one of those lead positions still able to contest for the win of that race, still likely to have finished second in that race, and when you disqualify Alonso, then been declared the winner of that race. So your problem here is that they've still not disqualified Alonso. The only reason that Massa wasn't able to win that race was the Ferrari error. And that's the top and bottom of it. But you can't think like that because it's your desire that won't let you think like that. And that desire is grounded in you wanting to change the outcome of that championship. So really what you need to do is look at your own desires and your motives for that. That's a you thing. The rest of the coulda, woulda, shoulda is just bollocks had it not have occurred, okay? So, had it not occurred, Massa could very, very well have had a great race and go on to win. He still could have. Right? He still could have, based on that safety car situation. Just in the same way that Rosberg was impacted, Hamilton was impacted, everybody who finished in the points was impacted. They were all impacted. And they still went on to have a race. But no, Massa's team messed up. It's as simple as that. So, where are we now? However, we're now into hypotheticals, yeah. And the butterfly effect, yeah. So why have you gone down that route? Why can you not identify that something has taken place, FIA dealt with it, all the teams responded to it, we continue the race, it then emerges afterwards that somebody cheated, but you want the race now avoiding? It doesn't happen. Let's say that happens. Well, now you've got everybody thinking slightly different about how they approach the rest of the season because they're no longer in positions they were after that race ended. Yeah. But the thing is, what you're now doing is extrapolating something that didn't happen. You see, again, this is the key, is that the FIA and Eccleston apparently were made aware and they didn't change it. They still kept the win for Alonso. Had they have done the right thing, had they ever disqualified Alonso, then that would have elevated Nico Rosberg to a race win, his first ever Grand Prix win. That could have affected his entire career. And that would have elevated Hamilton to second, and that would have given Hamilton 8 points as opposed to the 6 that he's recorded as having for that race. That would have meant going into the final race of the season that Hamilton would have had a lead of, I believe, 9 points. meaning all he needed to do was finish 7th in that race, not 4th or 5th, whatever it was. Meaning that on that last lap where he overtook Timo Glock in Brazil, with Massa winning the race, Massa would have been obviously celebrating the win, but he'd have known at that stage, or certainly his father and his brother that were celebrating, or the Brazilian fans that were celebrating, thinking that their driver was now winning the World Championship as well, they'd have been able to work out, and they'd have actually realised that, yeah, great, Felipe Massa's won the Brazilian Grand Prix, but as things stand, Hamilton, being behind Glock, that's still enough for Hamilton to still be the champion. So, okay, we can celebrate a race win, but we're not celebrating a championship. And then, when Hamilton does gain that position on Glock in that last lap, then Glock doesn't get death threats accusing him of giving that away. There's your butterfly effect, isn't it? That's what actually happened as a result of the FIA corruption. That's the impact. It actually made Hamilton's job of securing that championship harder. Why can't you see that? You see, what I'm not doing, you're trying to say it's my scenario. It's not my scenario. I didn't make it up, right? I didn't construct that. That is the scenario of what actually happened. Singapore Grand Prix took place. Piquet crashed his car. How do you deal with that? Well, firstly, in the moment, you don't know that that's like Nicholas Latifi. Oh no, Nicholas Latifi has crashed. What do we do? Go, oh, well, that was done on purpose. We'll just void it all now. No, what do? No, what they do is they go, okay, there's a crash car. How do we deal with this? Deploy the safety car. What happens now? Well, all the teams know we bunch up behind the safety car. We might be able to utilise this opportunity to pit. Prior to the resumption of racing, they've got to do the unlapping of lap cars. Oh, they didn't. Oh, but he absolutely deserved it. That's what you call cheating, because there they didn't apply the regulations. That's where your problem is. Singapore, they did apply the regulations. Somebody's crashed, so we need to deal with this. Safety car deployed, okay? You know that the pit lane's closed. You know when the pit lane's going to open. Your choice as to what you do. Okay, you've chosen to pit your car. Right, you've all chosen to pit your car. In you come. Change your tyres, refuel, out you go. Oh, Ferrari's messed up. And as part of messing up, that's an unsafe release that you're going to get a penalty for. Now you want to go back on that and go, oh, yeah, but if he hadn't have crashed on purpose, then it would have been something different. And shut up. Right? Shut up. And the only reason you're doing that is because you don't like Lewis Hamilton. Own up to it. All right? Own up to it. So, everybody thinks slightly different based on desire. So, here we go. What I'm getting at is you seem to be taking the parts you want to fit a narrative. Look at what your projection, that you want to fit a narrative. It's not my narrative. It's not my narrative. It's just a determination of what actually happened and how you deal with this. You show me a sporting event that has been voided because somebody cheated. I'll give you an example, the Tour de France during the Lance Armstrong years. And the reason that they voided those events is that there were that many people that were all cheating at that time. Apparently, it was estimated that about 70% of those competitors in the Tour de France in that era were doping. And therefore, if they stripped Lance Armstrong of the title, they didn't know who the next clean athlete was to award it to. So that you don't know, you're stripping it from a drug cheat to give it to somebody else that's also cheating. So they said, we don't know who it would be the valid winner, so we're just going to not declare a winner for those events. Anywhere else, as long as nobody else is cheating, you award it to the next clean competitor that has contested in that event in accordance with the rules and has emerged the victor. Massa had the opportunity. The only thing that deprived Massa of that opportunity to win that was his team's error. That's not my narrative. That is the facts of the situation. None of this coulda, woulda, shouldas. Something did happen. It wasn't me that made that happen. That was Flavio Briatore. That's why you disqualify him. That's why you take away Renault's points from the entire season as punishment. That's why you do this to these people. That's not my narrative. But in actuality, nobody has any idea how that roast unfolds if he does the right thing. Again, you're making up the scenario that didn't happen. That's not my narrative. You are the one with the narrative trying to now project a situation that didn't happen. What would happen at Abu Dhabi 2021 if Nicholas Latifi didn't crash? And the reality is, nobody knows. Oh, but if Latifi didn't crash, Hamilton would have won. We don't know that. What we know is there were 5.4 laps remaining and Hamilton was approximately 12 seconds ahead. What we know is that Max Verstappen didn't appear to be gaining at that kind of rate and therefore looked in no way capable of catching. Hamilton looked to be on course. But what we didn't find out was Hamilton didn't complete those 5.4 laps at racing speed. Would that car have suffered a mechanical problem at racing speed? Would those tyres have suffered a problem at racing speed? We don't know. Okay, I'm not going to go, yeah, he would have, we don't know. But what we do know is that a car crashed. The FIA had to deal with that situation by deploying the safety car, which is what they did. And what we do know is they then broke the rules of the sport to manufacture a last lap shootout. That's the illegal bit. That's not my narrative. That's what happened. That's not based on desire. That's on the rules of the sport. Rules that they're all competing under. And therefore, if you break them, that's where your problem is. That's not a Mercedes error. It's not a clever cards from Red Bull. It's a rule break. When you break the rules, you then skew the competitive outcomes artificially through breaking the rules. That's not my narrative. That's what it is. And if you can't understand that, you don't know how to think. So, they're on about PK doing the right thing. It's all speculation and hyperbole at that point. Yes, you're the one that's bringing forward the speculation and hyperbole, but you're projecting it as being my narrative, right? And my scenario. It's not my narrative. It's not my scenario. It's just an evaluation of what did take place and how you deal with that appropriately. You're the one that's projecting situations. But what if it hadn't have happened? It did happen. That being said, if you change anything about the outcome of that race, you can't assume the rest of history stays the same. Of course you can't. But then the thing is this. Yes, coming away from that that round in the championship, Singapore, the points in that drivers' championship will be different if you disqualified Alonso. There's no point in saying if PK Jr. hadn't crashed. That's the thing, right? There's no point because that did happen, right? But the points change. They should have changed. They didn't change. But how does it affect it? Well, how it affects it is at the next round. What are you going there looking to do? Every competitor is going to the next round looking to do the same thing because you go to every round looking to do the same thing, and that same thing is you're looking to win. You want to try and win the Grand Prix. You want to achieve as many points as you can. So surely your aim going to every Grand Prix is the same. The pressure level can be different. The greater that deficit of points that you've got to catch, you know that the greater jeopardy. If I don't win here, that's going to reduce my chances even further. But you know that. It might be if you've got a bigger lead, you're not as desperate to win because, well, it's not so important that I do win. Providing if I get just second or third, that's still enough based on the advantage I've already got. It can affect those dynamics. But ultimately, you're still going to try and race to win, surely. I don't know. Anyway, however, the point you're trying to make is very clear. Cheating, manipulation, and everything it entails greatly affects more than just a few. Aside from all the financial investors, it screws us, the fans, over the most. At the end of the day, without the fan base, Formula One is just a bunch of guys racing a very expensive hobby. Okay, and it's actually different to that as well, because Formula One wouldn't exist if it wasn't a money-making machine. These billionaires, they're not just going to invest in Formula One if there is no return, if there's no benefit to them. If they just wanted to do something as a hobby, they would buy a different form of racing car, one that's already readily available, such as Porsche GT Championships or whatever it might be. Okay, you can easily go and buy a race car for £500,000, set up a race team for a few million, and go and enjoy your hobby of motor racing if that's what you want to do, if you've got the funds to do that. What you're not going to do is create a bespoke formula which is going to cost at least 125 mil per year for you to run your team, unless you're getting something back out of it. If there was no sponsorship, they're not just going to piss all that money away just on that. And you're not going to get them all doing that in the World Series if spectators aren't going to be there, if it's not going to be televised, if nobody's going to get anything out of the sponsorship. They do it because of a return. So, the other part I disagree with is your representation of George as a cheat at Spa 2024. Right, you don't like me representing George as a cheat. Well, was George's car legal? Answer: no, it got disqualified. Right, so if you're not legal in any sport, what does that mean? It means you're not competing in accordance with the rules. You've breached the rules, therefore you're cheating. What's the matter? You don't like the word cheat, okay? You don't like a word that I use. That's a you thing, all right? That's a you thing, because ultimately, if he wasn't cheating, if the car was legal, he wouldn't have been disqualified, right? So you're competing in this. The rules are your car has got to be a minimum weight of this when you finish the race. Okay, is it? No, it's not. Okay, well, you've breached the rules. Oh, but it's not cheating. It's cheating because they're the rules and you didn't comply with the rules. Yeah, but no, yeah, but. Okay, you didn't comply with the rules. They're the rules. You've breached them. That's classified as cheating. Therefore, you're disqualified. What part of that do you not understand? That's what it is. But you want to excuse that, and we'll go on to that in a second. It's quite simple as well, because I'll address that as you're coming through the bullshit later on. Yes, he did come in underweight, yeah, which is breach of the regulations. Yeah, cheated. However, it's not because he cheated. Well, what's it because then? And you're going to try it. You're trying to reason that now. The fact that he only did one pit stop caused his tyres to degrade more than what they'd anticipated. Oh, right. So what did they anticipate? Right. You're saying that they anticipated they wouldn't degrade that much, and it was due to him only doing one stop. Well, why did they put him on one stop? Oh, because they tried to make him beat Lewis. Okay, so it wasn't planned to do one stop, but then when they thought, wow, we can beat Lewis by just doing one stop, so let's do one stop. Yeah, but surely if you are doing your strategy, part of your strategy is tyre wear. You know that the longer you run these tyres, the more rubber that gets worn off the tyres, and therefore the tyres become lighter. Therefore, if you continue using those tyres and then tyres continue to get lighter, that's going to affect the weight of your car. That's a neglect issue then, isn't it? But you're trying to reason that. The fact that he only did one pit stop caused his tyres to degrade more than what he'd anticipated. It clearly was not their initial strategy coming into the race. But it was the only option George had to win. So your only option of George winning was to compete in a car that was lighter than it was allowed to be. Because that's what he was doing. In those laps that Lewis Hamilton wasn't able to overtake him, the car was running lighter than it was supposedly allowed to be. Bearing in mind the fuel that it needed to get it to the end of the race and the weight of the car that the car needed to be in at the end of the race, how many laps was George in that situation? Wow. How many laps was he able to then maintain that speed through being in this car that was going to be lighter than it was allowed to be come the end of the race? And is that giving him a performance advantage? Yes, it is, isn't it? So it's cheating. But you don't know how to think, do you? Oh, it's not cheating. It's not cheating. It's because they shut up. Right? You just don't know how to think. The problem about that strategy at Spa is what happens after you finish the final lap at Spa. At every other track on the calendar, the cars do a cool down lap. During that lap, the drivers typically drive their cars off the racing line, that the hot tyres will pick up as much marbling as possible to add weight to the tyres. This is not the case at Spa. Oh, was that something they sprung on them? Did the teams know? Is this what they all know that they could do at Spa? So they know that actually picking up marbles, because we're all experts at Formula One. Is that a known dynamic? Yeah. So you can't do that. So you have to make sure when you're running your strategy, you're fueling your car, you're making sure that you're leaving enough rubber on your tyres for the weight of your car, you're still in compliance with the regulations of the sport. Bearing in mind, you don't get this lap to pick up the rubber. Oh, but the problem here is that you didn't get the lap. Yeah, we know. They're the rules and regulations. All the teams know that. Everybody else, they also didn't get that lap to pick up the rubber. How many of them were underweight? Oh, but. Stop being a dickhead. Okay? This is your desire, you see. You'd rather say, oh, yeah, but it wasn't George's fault, because Lewis then wouldn't have won. Oh, but it wasn't Ferrari's fault, because Lewis then wouldn't have won. What is it? What is it that you don't like about Lewis Hamilton? Let me know what you think in the comments section, because this is bullshit and it's quite revealing about you. So, the problem about this, alright, it's all that shit. Hot tyres picking up the marble. This is not the case, as the driver's been, okay, and they reverse back up the pit lane. That being said, had George been able to do the cool down lap like at every other track, he would have picked up coulda, woulda, shouldas. But it's not a coulda, woulda, shoulda, because you can't. And they know you can't. But you're trying to say, if it had been at another track, it'd have been okay. It's not at another track. It's at Spa. At Spa, this is what you do. And he didn't pick up the rubber. And he ended with a car that's illegal. And there you get disqualified. That's cheating. He was cheating. His car's not legal. Therefore, you don't get to win in that car. Oh, but calling him a cheat's not right. What is it then? Anyway, he needed for the car to make weight. It was extremely unfortunate, but he did not cheat in the race. He was unable to make the weight because the tyres were so degraded. So what about the races where cars have been disqualified for plank wear? Have I said Lewis Hamilton didn't cheat in those races when he was disqualified for the plank wear being too much? Did I say that he's not cheated? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. What I said to those events where Ferrari, for example, were disqualified, Hamilton was disqualified for too much plank wear, was okay. If that's what the decision is because he's not in compliance with the rules, then fine. But the issue was they disqualified Hamilton, promoted somebody else into the points without checking that car. So you promoted somebody into a point scoring position, but have not verified whether they're a legal car or not. And that is where the problem arises. You can't just award somebody now, elevate somebody into the points without checking that they've also passed the tests as being regarded legal. That's where the problem is, and that's what I mention in my videos. Anyway, as for Lewis in that race, he tried to get past George. Oh, this is showing your motor racing knowledge now. But his only real opportunity was on the Kemmel Straight. However, it's the dirty air the problem, not George's lighter car than it's allowed to be. Right? He could never get enough room to let George get by George and slow down to get through Les Combes cleanly. Nevertheless, neither George nor Mercedes cheated in that race. No, neither George nor Mercedes, but he was running a lighter car, right? Too light, because it wasn't heavy enough come the end of the race. And therefore, because it's lighter, does that mean it accelerates quicker and you can leave it later on the braking and your car will still slow down because it's a lighter car? That gives you a quicker lap time. You know, does that give him a performance advantage, making it more difficult for Lewis to pass? Oh, but he wasn't cheating. No, no. Understand. But it's a dirty air, is it? Fuck me. Anyway, now blatant outright cheating would be something like the use of asymmetric braking system, which is something everyone else speculates Red Bull had and thought it was discovered. In that same season, after they had a slight performance dip after the Miami Grand Prix and the amendment to the regulation by the FIA to cover up a potential loophole came out. Now look how you're describing this, a potential loophole. It's not a potential loophole. Now this is something that we'll get into this, right? We'll read your comment first here. However, therein lies another issue I have with people making unsubstantiated claims against Red Bull. It's not about being a fanboy. It's, as you say, evidence. No one has ever provided evidence of such a device existing in the Red Bull car. There was plenty of speculation and mock-ups of how an inertia valve could potentially work to allow for this, but no one ever found nor produced evidence that it or anything like it ever existed on the Red Bull car. However, a lot of people like to use that as speculation as factual evidence of Red Bull cheating, but in reality it has no factual basis to warrant any claim of cheating. I would hope that someone such as yourself would agree with that. I'm sure a lot of people will also try to justify the claim with Max's rear brake caliper locking up at Melbourne, catching fire and blowing apart, especially since Red Bull deemed it to be a hydraulic failure. However, had there been an inertia valve in place, FIA scrutineers would have found it. That's your belief. Let's be clear about this. We get to find out about what they tell us. We don't get to prove anything, do we? So, we didn't know that PK had crashed on purpose until we got to find out that he had crashed on purpose. Who knew that PK had crashed on purpose? Oh, well, that would be Bernie Ecclestone. That would be the FIA in terms of Max Mosley and Charlie Whiting. They knew about that for over 6 months. We didn't. We get to know what they want us to know. These Epstein files, who knew? Oh, they all knew. All those in powerful positions, all those that were taking part, they all knew. They're all part of it. When did we get to find out? Oh, when they want us to find out. Or when it gets leaked. So, just because we don't know doesn't mean something isn't happening. So what is happening? What is happening is information is fed to us. Because we are not working within the FIA. There will be people that scrutinise these cars, and if they find problems with the cars, are they all reported? Are they all disclosed? Do they cover it up? Who do they cover it up for? Who don't they? How are they manipulating results? But what they did do is they reported, in 2022, they reported, and this is Sky Sports, reported that the Ferrari car and the Red Bull car had planks, under the car had planks which were designed to flex in at least 2 places. And these slider pucks were designed so that they would recess up, therefore reducing the wear to those slider pucks. That was reported by Sky Sports. Now, were that not the case, if these teams had not done that, then what is taking place is defamatory information is being reported about these teams. Somebody is accusing these teams of cheating. And if those teams were not doing that, they would have a valid legal case for defamation. You are trying to report to the world that we are cheating and we are not. That is harming us. That is harming our reputation, and hence that is causing us a financial loss financial harm. We are going to take you to court. We are going to sue you, and you are now liable for that harm for the falsehood that you are reporting about us. That is what those teams could easily do if the information was false. Remember, this is what media reported. They would be liable for false reporting. Those teams didn't do that. Why didn't they do that? Is it because they were doing something wrong? How did the FIA deal with that? Oh, the FIA went, oh, well, we're not going to disqualify these teams. We're going to dress this up as a new anti-porpoising amendment to the regulations. That's what happened in 2022. In 2024, we got, once again, it being proposed by media, by the likes of Sky Sports, the notion of Red Bull running an asymmetric braking device. Now, an asymmetric braking device, like it or not, is a driver aid. It is something which means that the driver can hit the brakes harder, lowering the risk of locking up. Going round a corner, the wheels of the car rotate at different speeds. The wheels taking the wider arc around the corner have to cover more ground, hence have to travel faster. And if the braking force across the axle is the same, then the driver has to control that himself. If there's a device on the car that enables one of those wheels to rotate more because the braking force across that axle is different between those two wheels, then it's easier to drive the car. It is, like it or not, a driving aid. It aids the driver. Driving aids are illegal. There's no such thing as loophole. That is a driving aid. It is illegal. So it was reported that Red Bull were using that. If it was false, Red Bull had the opportunity to take those to court for making defamatory remarks against Red Bull. Red Bull didn't do that. The FIA didn't disqualify Red Bull. The FIA, oh, we've made an amendment to the regulations again. Look at what's really going on here. So you suggesting that it's my narrative, it's not a narrative. It's what is actually happening. Look at what is actually happening. Fucking learn how to fucking think. But you, because again, you like Max Verstappen, so you want to go, oh, you can't accuse Red Bull of cheating because there's no evidence of them cheating. Well, what is actually going on? Reports are being made of wrongdoing. They drop a bit of blood in the water for the feeding frenzy. They like to incite the argument in the social media, don't they? So, are Red Bull just complicit? Are Red Bull saying, no, we didn't do this, but we're not going to sue you, because what actually it does, we know that the fanboys are going to start arguing in the comment sections, right? That's going to cause uproar, and we're all going to benefit from it anyway. And we don't mind being cast as the pantomime villain in this show. We don't mind being the hated ones. We're the ones, we will happily take on that role. We know who we attract. We're all in the show together. Is that what it's all about? Look at it for what is really happening. If it was you, if you were being accused of cheating, if you were running one of those teams and you were running a clean car and somebody accused you of cheating, that is going to harm you. It's going to harm your brand. Your sponsors are going to be going, hang on a minute, I don't want to be associated with you because you're cheating. I don't want my name dragged through the mud with you if you're cheating. So that's going to be a breach of our contract. You're going to be liable for that. And if you weren't cheating, you'd go, no, I'm not cheating. These are false accusations against me, and we're going to hold them to account. We're going to prove our innocence, and we are actually going to punish them and demonstrate to the world that these people are lying against us. Red Bull didn't do that, did they? Red Bull didn't do that, and they had every opportunity to do that. So what does that actually say? What did the FAA do? Oh, a lot. What they've done every single time. Well, we don't want to let the world know that this sport is just a manipulation and just full of cheating. So what we'll do, we'll cover it up. We'll dress it up as a anti-porpoising device. We'll dress it up as an amendment to the regulations to close a potential loophole. They don't know what a loophole or a grey area is. Or like Singapore 2008, oh, we'll just try and keep it quiet so they don't find out. That's what's happening all of the time. All that out of the way, it's truly hard to say what is or isn't a lie with Formula One anymore, because they're obvious scripts they seem to be playing out year after year to ensure they keep everyone on the edge of their seats and tuned in for the drama. Exactly, and this is what I'm saying. You're contradicting yourself. You've made this long ass comment without checking yourself before you made it, because now you're saying what's true. Take, for example, last year at Las Vegas. No way both Lando and Oscar had plank wear disqualifying them. So you're happy to say that that didn't happen for McLaren, but you're not happy to say it when it happened with Lewis and Charles. I don't know why that is, but you're happy to say that, I mean, McLaren didn't have a problem for the rest of the year, did they? They were running fine. They were the fastest car. Why were the fastest car? How did the McLaren emerge as the fastest car? 2022, Red Bull were the fastest car. 2023, Red Bull blitzed everybody. 2024, Red Bull were once again the fastest car. But then, 9 races in, I mean, Miami was about the 6th race. Donald Trump went to the McLaren garage, the man with the Midas touch. There was a dodgy safety car deployment. The timing of that was extremely dodgy. And guess who benefited from that? Oh, that was McLaren. And then McLaren won. Funny that, isn't it? And then from race about 9 onwards, the asymmetric braking device was declared. The performance fell off a cliff. Red Bull fell off a cliff. Not enough for Max to lose the title. No, not enough for that. But enough for McLaren to win the prize money. Oh, and they'd only at the end of 2023 or around about then, they'd just signed with DP World. Mohammed Ben Sulayem's brother, you know, the guy that likes his torture videos. Yeah, they just signed a deal with them for McLaren. The head of the FIA's brother signs a deal with McLaren. Then all of a sudden, McLaren start winning. You couldn't make it up, could you? You couldn't make it up. And then in 2025, the McLaren is blitzing everybody. Not a problem at any circuit. Until you get to this circuit where there is a problem. Funny that, isn't it? And then they're both disqualified. But what's happened? That's reinvigorated the title, everybody. Stay excited. It's only live once. We're now manufacturing a 3-way for you all. You'll be excited watching that, won't you, lads? Anyway, however, in doing so, that brought Max back into the picture, and now we have a 3-way title fight on our hands, and potential greatest point deficit comeback in F1 history was on the line. You couldn't make it up unless they do make it up. So you're identifying this. But the thing is, you won't allow you to identify it other ways. You won't allow it if it somehow validates Lewis Hamilton, and you won't allow it if it somehow like questioning Red Bull. Why? That is you. That's because you won't allow yourself to actually think that way because of your personal self-serving desires. See, I'm not saying that Ferrari weren't illegal. Right? What I'm saying is, all right, prove to me that everybody else was legal and that those that they substituted in were legal. And if McLaren were illegal, fine. It does seem rather strange that that was the only Grand Prix that they were illegal at. What made it different there? They were able to set their car up at every other track where that didn't happen. What went wrong there? Anyway, and people will come up with their bullshit ideas. Oh, well, it's because I don't give a shit what people think, because actually these things are being contrived. Oh, it's because it was a sprint weekend. They didn't get the time in qualifying, in practice, and therefore because of that, fuck off, because you know nothing. And that's the thing is, Formula One wants to make you think you know. You're a real fan of Formula One, aren't you? Yeah, you know that this is a highly complex technical sport, don't you? Yeah, you know it's about downforce and the clean air and the dirty air and the tyre compound and you know fuck all. Just in the same way that I know fuck all. And the reason we know fuck all is because we're not there setting the cars up. We don't have all the data. We don't have access to all that. And we don't know what is being manipulated at any of these events. So we know nothing. We're going on the bullshit that we're fed. And they'll feed us that bullshit so that you'll be like, oh, yeah, it's because of that. Yeah, it's the dirty air that caused that. Yeah. Yes, lads, it's the dirty air that caused that. It's the dirty air. It's the dirty air. Yeah, it's them tyres. It's them tyres. Yeah, it's the tyres. It's the tyres. It's the tyres. Yeah, they all know all these. Yeah, I think it's because of this. Yeah. They're the ones that are manipulating it. Do you even know if all those teams are actually given the same tyre compound? Because what we do know, there's 5 tyre compounds, and at any given race, then they pick 3 of them. Could be tyre compound 1, 2, and 3, and it'll be colour coded: red, yellow, and white. But what if one of those teams is provided with tyre compound 3, 4, and 5? Still colour coded the same colour codes as all the other teams, right? Still looking the same, but actually their red tyre is actually the equivalent of everybody else's white tyre. Their yellow tyre is much softer, and I've got it the wrong way around, but you understand the concept. It could be a different set of tyres, different rubber compound, giving them a different performance. We don't know. We don't get to test that rubber. But what's the narrative? Oh, that's running higher downforce at this track. That means it's harder on its tyres. Oh, yeah, it's running higher downforce, so it means it's harder on its tyres. Yes, we know. We know fuck all. Because it could be they've been provided with a different set of compound tyres to everybody else. Because that's all part of a manipulation. We don't know, do we? Oh, but they've said, no, that can't happen. How do you know it can't? We don't know. We don't know. It's all starting to remind me of the WWF. The action is real, but the outcomes are scripted. To say what these guys do is not hard or difficult is disingenuous. But to say that it's not done in a manner that ensures they bring in billions, well, I suppose it's up to us to believe what we want. Well, indeed. You know, these drivers that drive these cars are supremely talented. The vast majority of us just would not be able to lap them cars around those tracks at anywhere near the speed that those lads can. Okay, that's just the simple facts of it. I don't claim that I'd be able to get anywhere near the times that those drivers are lapping in, let alone try and race against other people, which is what they're doing. Okay, so they're good at what they do, but that doesn't mean it's not a contrivance. Doesn't mean that things are happening to literally contrive outcomes for entertainment, and that's not pure sport. It's not sport at all. It's just entertainment, but it's sold as a sport, and that is the problem. If it was sold as entertainment, come and watch cars just going around a track fast. All right, you might get a few people that are going to spend money on that, but you wouldn't get a global following. You wouldn't get people tuning in the way that they do. It wouldn't be anyway. The fact that it's a sold sport as a competitive thing, supposed to be contested as a sporting contest with sporting outcome, is what actually attracts all the business. If it's just a show, if it's just an exhibition, you don't get anywhere near that level of interest in it. And that's where the fraud lies. So, to quote Morpheus, you take the blue pill, the story ends, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Well, here's to taking the red pill with you. You've demonstrated in the latter half of your comment that you realise it's bullshit. You've demonstrated that you've got to question some of the things that go on, that they contrive to manufacture that end of the season that we're seeing in 2025. Bring Max Verstappen back into it. Slow Oscar down. Manufacture a three-way championship battle that went down to the last Grand Prix of the season, so that the season we didn't get to like three Grand Prix to go, and the Constructors' Championship has been decided, And actually the Drivers' Championship's been won, but we've still got 3 Grand Prix left. Yeah, nobody's that bothered about them. No, you've got to maintain interest so that you get full attendance at each of those Grand Prix, and you get a full array of spectators tuning in to watch it on the TV. They need that for the money. All the sponsors need the maximum exposure to get their money's worth. It's all about money. So they're manufacturing it for an exhibition to get people to watch. It's a contrivance. It's what it is. So look, examine yourself. All right, examine what you're on about with these opening few points here. It is cheating with Russell. All right, and this bit about here, it's not my narrative. It's the evaluation of what actually took place and how you deal with what actually took place, not speculating on if it hadn't have taken place, and therefore using that as a reason to then void a race, which is not how you deal with it. In any event, in any sport, if somebody is cheating, it impacts how that particular event is played out. But you don't then cancel the event. Take cycling or take long distance running, for example. If you've got a cheat, let's take 10,000 meter running, 25 laps of the track. Somebody's a drug cheat. They set off in that race and they are lapping at 60-second laps. Normally, let's say these runners are doing 63 to 65-second laps, right? Random numbers. But somebody goes off, they're a drug cheat, and they're doing 60-second laps. But the other competitors feel under pressure and feel they've got to try and stay with him. Now, what that's doing, that's making the other competitors run a race that they wouldn't normally do. But they feel that, oh, I've got to try and stick with this guy, not let him build up a lead. That means they get knackered too quickly. It means they run out of steam. Somebody who might have been pacing themselves a bit better and saying, oh, actually, there's no way I can stay with that pace. They don't try and stay with that pace. And then in the latter stages of that race, when all the other athletes are blown up, well, that athlete that didn't attempt to stay with them comes through, finishes second to the drug cheat. You then disqualify the drug cheat. The guy that paced himself becomes a race winner. Oh, you've got to avoid it because somebody cheated and that affected the whole race. The other runners wouldn't have gone with him if he wasn't a drug cheat and wasn't running at that pace, and therefore you've ruined that. No, unlucky. Right? Everybody is subject to the same conditions. Okay? They all did the best they could, doing what it was that they decided they were going to do in those conditions. Somebody decided they weren't going to do that. They ran their own race. And in the end, that got the best out of themselves. That's what you've got to do in this world, in accordance with the rules. Likewise, cycling, same sort of thing. Somebody makes a break from the peloton. Somebody tries to go with them. Okay, the person that tries to go with them runs out of steam, right? And then they get swallowed up by the peloton and they end up losing ground to the peloton. The person that made the break for it is a drug cheat. They get disqualified from the stage. Then what? Oh, we cancel the stage because somebody cheated in that stage. No, they're the drug cheat. They are the ones that get disqualified. The person that tried to go with them, well, they're unlucky. Unlucky. That's the way it goes. But you want to cancel that stage. Why do you want to cancel the stage? Oh, because it then changes Hamilton's title. That's all it is. That's all it is. So, that'll do on this video. Thank you all for your time, and more to come.